Hi, my name is Jeneen Miller, and I'm a survivor of a lockdown reform school that was located in Ramona, California. I was locked in there in 1988 against my will. My parents tricked me into going to this lockdown reform school by saying I was going to a therapist, but it was nothing of the sort, and I was locked in there for 8 months against my will. In this horrific place, I was tortured on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level. I've seen other girls torturing other girls, and they were also victims in this reform school. And it was just something that you would never imagine that would be happening in the United States of America. In this torture camp, you had no rights. You couldn't use the phone to make a phone call. You couldn't write letters. They were all monitored. Um, it seems to be the ongoing theme in a lot of other programs that are wilderness camps, boot camps for kids, reform schools, conversion therapies, and I am just telling you my story of what happened to me in this lockdown facility. It was called Victory Christian Academy, again located in Ramona, California, and it was nothing that I had ever experienced. I was a Christian when I was 16 years old, and I had never seen a congregation do anything so horrific to little girls, including myself. They had us on a strict regimen, so it was very militant. We didn't have our own time, and free time was designated. We were on a schedule, and it was their schedule. That's my dog snoring. There were torturing girls in this camp, as well as myself. We were threatened to eat our own vomit if we threw up our food. We had to eat everything on our plate. We were timed to eat. We were made to. The program was set up where you just wanted to keep to yourself, because if you tried to make any friends in this place, you would be punished on separation. And they had us writing demerits as a form of punishment, and it is a form of reprogramming your mind in writing. So instead of giving yourself a positive affirmation, you were given negative reinforcements, and you were doing it visually, seeing it on paper. So a good example would be, I will not ask a stupid question. I will not forget a pencil. I will not interrupt. And usually they were a lot longer than that. I will not ask permission to use the restroom in the middle of the night. 500 times, 1,000 times, it could double, triple, etc. That's just one form of abuse that was going on in this place. The other was isolation. It was called the Get Right Room. So the moment I entered into this facility, I had an idea of what this place was like because a friend of mine had been locked up in there, and I thought it was wrong what they did to her, but I really didn't think that I was going to get sent to this place because I wasn't on drugs. I was on honor roll mention. This was a reform school, and it didn't make sense to me that parents could actually send their children that were doing well in school, didn't get in any trouble, no criminal record, but I was dead wrong on that. They will gladly accept any child in there as long as their parents have a story of having a rebellious child that they want to conform. So my honor roll mention, my good behavior in school didn't really mean squat. In this camp, I was reprogrammed to think differently about myself. They taught us how to tear each other down in this place. I say in these places because I'm speaking for many other camps that are very similar to mine, but I'll focus on mine for now. All of this was in the name of God. They were backing up, tormenting us with scripture, calling us names, judging us, separating the sheep from the goats, so the non-Christians from the Christians, and sticking us in piles and backing that up with scripture, while I heard many girls crying and sobbing in these piles. I could do nothing about it. I couldn't speak up about it. If I were to speak up, I would be punished in isolation or any other forms of punishment they had. One girl staring at the pole all day, reciting how bad she is. So programming her to feel bad about herself while she's staring at a pole. I will not have a bad attitude. I will not be defiant. There were so many different negative reinforcements that we received on a day-to-day basis. This is all you would see throughout this torture camp. The picture that I can paint, I feel like I'm all over the place, but the picture that I can paint for you about this place is that you couldn't speak your mind. You couldn't have a mind. Your mind was taken from you. And I know that's hard to fathom or to comprehend, especially if you're not a survivor, but every survivor knows exactly what I'm talking about. When you're in this place, picture this, you're in this place and you can't talk about a movie that you saw or a friend that you're close with. That's positive. You can't talk about the outside world, period. And if you try to do it or sing a song, I sang On the Road Again by Willie Nelson. And that's when I found out you couldn't sing a song that's secular music. I couldn't sing On the Road Again. It was unbelievable. And I was punished for that. I couldn't talk about the newspaper, what was going on in the world, listen to the radio, talk on the phone. I couldn't get a hold of an attorney to try to get me out. I couldn't call 911. I couldn't report child abuse. I couldn't escape. There was a 12-foot fence with barbed wire, and there were surveillance cameras all around. There were also the whole dorm was either you were watched by other helpers, so you couldn't really communicate with someone. You couldn't talk about the abuse. So if you saw, all of us saw a girl being duct taped to a chair and duct tape over her mouth and binded to a chair, and no one could do anything about it. In fact, the dorm mother, which is a staff member, encouraged other girls to have their Bibles open and back it up with scripture of how horrible this girl was. I just had to watch this girl being tormented, which was torture in itself for us too. And it was almost like our hands were tied behind our backs, feeling helpless, that we couldn't do anything about it. The other thing is the program was set up that it was on a hierarchy level. So when you are against another girl breaking a rule and you're reinforcing um, the rules and you become a helper. So you become a helper when your behavior is better and you're complying to their rules, and then you're enforcing the rules. So they were delegating us to work for them and to abuse. They were delegating us to abuse other children in the school. And it was awful because you couldn't trust anyone in this reform school at all. You couldn't make any friends. I was alone. I figured out that if I just didn't talk to anybody, then I would get into less trouble. And I still racked up demerits. Don't get me wrong. But I racked up less demerits because I didn't have any friends. So I just talked about God and the Bible, and that was it. And I kept to myself. If I spoke, it was about God and the Bible, and that's it. And kept to myself. I mainly just tried to smile through it. And even our emotions were controlled. There were many times that they would say, why is everyone so depressed? Everyone should be smiling. And you're getting abused and now you're being forced to smile through it. It was just so demented how we had to smile through it. We couldn't talk about it. We couldn't talk about, these are programs designed to help families. So none of us could talk about our family problems. There was never a talk about family problems. We weren't allowed to talk about the outside world, remember? So we couldn't talk about our family problems. I could never say, I don't feel loved by my family or any of it, nothing. And I certainly couldn't write my family and work things out either. It was mandatory for us to write letters to our parents twice a week, which I thought was sick because I did not want to write my parents at all. And if I did write them, it would be to give them a piece of my mind. And I couldn't offer a piece of my mind because I was monitored. So could you imagine being locked against your will? You didn't commit a crime. I would have had more rights in minimum and maximum security prison for, being accused of a crime that I didn't commit. At least I could have made a phone call or had a visitor that I wanted. Instead, I'm writing to my parents and I have to twice a week. And all I could do is talk about the Bible. So I try to, leave little hints of, about, by pulling up verses from the Bible. But, I guess my parents couldn't connect the dots to that. But then again, they sent an honor roll student to a lockdown reform school. So what does that tell you? I'm making light of it, but it's really, it's really sad that these places continue to torture our kids. And I'm telling you my story so you will think twice as a parent about sending your child to a wilderness camp, reform school, conversion therapy, rehabilitation program, etc. Back to the room of isolation. I volunteered to go to the room of isolation because I had an idea of what it was like. And the minute I got there, I wasn't allowed to talk about anything negative about my family. So here I was thrown into this lockdown facility. You can imagine how angry I was I was full of rage that I was just outraged that my family would send me here. And I'm talking to myself while after delousing in the shower, they had every girl delouse. And as I was getting ready, I was voicing how I felt. You know, how could my parents send me here? I was on honor roll mention, and I was just going off um, about my family, as I should. You know, that's a normal reaction, right? And you know, when you have a family situation, don't you want to talk about feelings? Don't you want to talk about problems or how you feel or how you know, your perspective on the way things are? You couldn't. I was shut down immediately. Um, and because I was shut down, all I wanted to do was be alone. And I knew about the room of isolation. I just didn't know that they lock girls in the room of isolation for days, weeks, and months at a time. I had no idea about that. I thought maybe a half an hour. So after I volunteered, they were sort of smirking about the Get Right room, and the staff member took my hand and grabbed it hard and dragged me to the room of isolation. So, yes, I volunteered, but I was still dragged to the room of isolation, physically dragged. And I remember passing dorms up, and the dorm mother said, "Keep your eyes to yourselves," to all of the girls. They weren't allowed to look at me. And I was locked in isolation for 8 hours. And the only reason why I was able to get out so early is the mere fact that when the dorm mother opened the door and asked if I wanted to come out, I said, "No, I don't want to come out." And it was because I just wanted to be far away from these people as possible and just process what just happened to me. And I needed some more apparently I needed some more time to process it. And that's how I got out of isolation. And it saved me because God only knows how long that they were going to keep me in the room of isolation, especially now knowing from talking to other survivors that girls were locked in there for days, weeks, and months at a time. I did witness a girl that was locked in there for a week at a time. And I know it had to be more than that, but I was on the other side of the dorm, so I really didn't know. And we were so busy working and doing hard labor and our regimen that I just didn't really know it was days, weeks, and months at a time. I always saw it occupied. I always saw the Get Right room occupied. This one survivor had matted hair, so you know she wasn't combing her hair. She looked tired. The preacher bragged in chapel that he was just giving her baby food, so she was malnourished. We were giving for food, we were given halves or wholes, and I was on wholes at the beginning, and you had to eat everything on your plate, but you were able to get seconds when you're on wholes. But when you're on halves, you're not allowed to get seconds, and it's a smaller portion of food. Well, something happened after my 3-month visit where my mother told me that I couldn't. Happened after my 3-month visit where my mother wasn't allowed to talk about anyone from the outside world, but thought she would tell me that my boyfriend found a girlfriend and was much happier, and she whispered it into my ear. So I didn't want to eat. And if you don't eat, or you throw up, they will make you eat your own vomit. If you don't eat everything on your plate, they will lock you up in the get right room, and the meal will sit there for hours and days until you eat it. And if it's a day old or 2 days old and you vomit, you're eating your own vomit. They will make you eat your own vomit. I had this playing in my head the whole time. So I was so afraid every day, please don't vomit. Please don't vomit. And I just, that psychological torment in my head about the repercussion of vomiting was going through me every day in this place. And forget about the physical part of it, just the psychological damage of having that fear. I had that fear all the time. So you were just in survival mode. That's all. I wasn't thinking about studying. I wasn't thinking about anything but that, pretty much, in surviving and not getting in the trouble and not getting into merit and not getting locked up or picked on. I saw girls being picked on during exercise about their weight. Girls were being picked on about their weight in chapel. So can you imagine? I was a Christian, and this is a Christian standpoint, because when I write the book, I'm 16 years old. By the way, I wrote a book called Pieces of Victory, and it's coming from a 16-year-old's point of view. So I write in the present tense, and in the present tense, I'm a Christian at 16 years old. So it's a Christian standpoint of what's going on in the lockdown reform school. I saw in chapel a preacher who, ironically, is overweight, talking about the deadly sins, the 7 deadly sins, and gluttony as one of them. And then he would look at another girl in chapel and point her out. And it was just really sad how he would pick on her about her weight. She was also picked on during exercise. Her leg was hurting and she couldn't do it anymore, and they called her a fake and a phony. There was a lot of helpers, which are girls. They're girls in the school, calling other girls names. You're a fake, you're a phony, you're a disgrace to God. Pick up yourself and get up and pick up the pace. Otherwise, all of you girls are going to have to start all over again. So, again, it was very militant, but we didn't sign up for be all you could be. I didn't sign up for the military. And this is beyond, militant. It was highly abusive. So I don't want to, say anything negative about the military, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of the regiment was very militant, and then you add child abuse on top of it. There's just, again, every day was reprogramming how horrible of a person you are. Every day you're there. There's no escaping it. It's in your face. And worse, spiritually, you are made out to be a heathen all the time. So this preacher just wanted you to make you feel like you were unfit to be a Christian, to call yourself a Christian. I don't want to pick on religious facilities. I'm just saying that these people use the flag of Christianity to hide child abuse. And what's worse is they use the Bible to back up their abusive behavior, which is definitely psychologically, spiritually damaging. I could go on and on and on about what happened to us in this program. I tried to take my life in this program. I pulled a sheet over my head and wanted to suffocate, especially after my 3-month visit by my mom. But that was just the thing that made me snap. It wasn't just what she said, it was everything, including the program. I was definitely abused, before the program, and then the program abused me. And sad to say, a lot of cases like mine where they were abused and parents just let them go into these lockdown facilities and sign their legal guardianship, giving the facility legal guardianship over us. You can hear my dog snoring. The main point of why I'm doing this is the fact that Liz Iannelli inspired me to be part of the campaign and encourage other survivors to come forward. And I felt very empowered today after talking to her, and I wanted to share my story. I've shared my story many times, but just in different ways. I have a show called Pieces of Victory where I'm interviewing survivors from different torture camps, like conversion therapies and wilderness programs, boot camps for kids. You get the idea. And I have a short film. I have done different things, but this is specifically for the ISeeYouSurvivor campaign. I'm hoping that many other survivors will come forth and tell their stories of what goes on behind closed doors. There's another facility that's out right now that's a sister program to the one that I was locked in. It's called the Hephzibah House. And it's pretty much the same type of program. They do things a little differently, but it's pretty much very, very similar. It's the same theme of scare tactics. They are giving them absurd amounts of water to drink. They're forcing them to drink an absurd amount of water. And then they're dictating when they're allowed to go to the bathroom. So I was dictated when I could go to the bathroom. For example, in the middle of the night, they had laser beams across, so you couldn't just jump off the bed without setting the alarm off. And it was almost like Tron, the movie Tron. That's the best way I could describe it, where everything was like just crisscrossed. And if you climbed out of bed, the alarm would go off. And if you woke up a helper, so they would shut off the alarm, you would get a demerit. And that demerit was a heavier crime, so to speak. That was 500 to 1,000 lines. I will not ask my helper permission in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. Back to the Hephzibah House, that was going on at Victory Christian Academy when I was there in 1988. However, if you were there at a different time, maybe something else was going on. I don't know, but this is what happened to me in 1988. there are other survivors that were there during my time that can back me up. And I encourage you to back me up, because there are survivors that say, well, that never happened to me. Well, okay, but what else happened to you? There are some survivors that think that this program was the best thing that ever happened to them. So according to what I am saying, they still believe that this saved them because of the programming. The preacher would say to us, you are nothing without me, you're nothing without this program. Because of us, we got you to clean up from drugs. And by the way, if you are on drugs and you're sent to this program, it's a good thing that I wasn't on drugs, but you're quitting cold turkey. You're quitting cold turkey, and the Bible is there for you. Well, there's a lot of things that can happen to you if you just stop taking, let's just say, pharmaceutical medication. A lot of health problems can happen if you just don't wean yourself off of it and you quit cold turkey. You can die from it. There are repercussions for that. And, I know that the same could happen if you're a drug user and you're just quitting cold turkey. So there wasn't any sympathy for that, and also they were just making the girls quit cold turkey instead of weaning them off of drugs. So sad. The Hephzibah House is open today. It's been open since 1971. So for 47 years, the Hephzibah House has been open. This is a billion-dollar industry, and they're still collecting money and sending girls to this facility. And a lot of it is because another girl will say, well, this changed my life, because they're programmed to think that this is the best thing that happened to them. It changed their lives. The Hephzibah House, they're being forced to wear diapers, because if they're forced an absurd amount of water, they have to hold in their urine or their bowel movement. What do you think is going to happen? Accidents are going to happen. So now they're humiliating the girls and having them wear diapers and name calling. Lots of name calling. Which is so against the grain of being a Christian. So it's still open today, and it's so sad. I'm hoping that someone will watch this video and realize that this needs to stop. That place needs to get closed down. It should have been closed down a long time ago, and no one is doing anything about it. I encourage you to look up Mary Coomer's video, and I will attach Mary Coomer's video to this YouTube video so you can check out her testimony. When you have many survivors coming forth and telling their stories, and no one is doing anything about it, it's quite discouraging, amongst the survivor community. But at the same token, I know eventually some changes will eventually happen. So I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop putting myself out there. I'm not going to stop telling my story. I'm not going to stop interviewing survivors. I will interview survivor after survivor until there are changes. And since there are no changes, I have a lot of work to do. No changes happening right now, but eventually. I just don't understand how America can just allow something like this to continue to happen and just turn a blind eye. I can go on about more torturous things that go on in this place. Go ahead and read my book, Pieces of Victory, when it comes out in a couple of months. There are other survivors' testimonies on Victory Christian Academy. You can visit sia-now.org. You can visit helpforteens.org. James Swift is a survivor of a conversion therapy. He has a book out. Liz Iannelli has a website, and I will go ahead and put that on the bottom of the screen so you can get to her website. And she is pretty much educating parents on what goes on in these lockdown camps and to think twice about sending your kids in these places. She's also there if you would like her to check on your child if they are in a camp and you're worried because you just watched my testimony and you want her to see if the child's okay. She knows what to look for. I guess that's it. I just want to tell my story again to shake up parents about thinking twice about sending their kids to these lockdown places. There are other means of working out a problem that's going on in your family. You can treat it as a whole family dynamic. And there's something called the Wraparound Program. And if you'd like to learn more information about that, you can talk to Jody Hobbs again at sia-now.org. Again, sia-now.org. She will be able to help you out with other alternatives. And Liz Iannelli can help too with other alternatives. And again, I'll go ahead and leave the website on the bottom of the screen. I know this is heavy for most people to take in, but this is something that's happening across our country. And if you're shocked to hear that a child is threatened to eat their own vomit and you don't like hearing about it, well, I don't like knowing that it exists today here in our country. You don't like hearing about it. I don't like knowing that it's still going on in this country. And a child today, as I'm speaking, is being tortured. This is an epidemic that's happening in our country, and I would like it to stop. ISeeYouSurvivor. Tell your story. Come out, be brave. When you make yourself vulnerable, it opens you up to change. Thank you so much for watching my testimony. I just don't understand how America can just allow something like this to continue to happen and just turn a blind eye.